What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I just wanted to do a quick discussion giving you guys my thoughts on the Battlefield 6 open beta. I just got done playing a couple hours with my buddies and thought I would compile my thoughts into a little video for you guys to let you know what I'm thinking about it. So that's what the goal is for the video today. Now, I want to make it very abundantly clear that, in my opinion, Battlefield was at its best all the way back with Bad Company 2. Bad Company 2 had 24-player teams, so 48 players in a game, and I felt that that was like the perfect amount of players. It's gone way above that now with I think 32 players on each side, so 64 players is just too much for me. It's always been kind of overwhelming, so I kind of fell out of love with the Battlefield series kind of around the end of Bad Company 2. To be fair, I didn't really play much 3 or 4 or obviously any of the games that followed. I played them a little bit, dabbled with them, but honestly very overwhelmed with that amount of players on the screen. And that's just because I'm a fucking old man and I'm 31 and can't keep up anymore. So that's kind of the thoughts that I had going into this. So I just want to make that very clear, because it's not going to be an absolutely glowing positive review that you've probably seen all over the internet to this point. My takes are going to be a little bit different. All right, so now that we got that stuff out of the way, we can actually talk about the beta itself. So Battlefield 6 is coming in after a very poor year for Battlefield with 2042, but they're in a bit of an interesting position because they had a very massive flop with 2042, and then Call of Duty came out, Black Ops 6 came out. That game's been getting lambasted basically across the entirety of the internet due to a variety of reasons. So a lot of the community's basically hating Black Ops 6, including myself. I didn't enjoy the later cycle of Black Ops 6. Haven't played it in months and months and months and months and months. And so with that being said, there is room for another big shooter to come in and kind of take over the industry and take over that market. And Battlefield 6 has been saying a lot of the right things to get those players interested in the game. So as far as the pre-release marketing goes, I think they're doing a really good job. It's kind of memey, but they said that they were not going to release like American Dad and Beavis and Butthead skins in the game and stuff like that, which I agree is fucking absurd that Call of Duty is kind of going down that path with those skins. It just makes the game look like Fortnite, and it looks ridiculously retarded, in my opinion. So that is a good thing, but obviously they're just kind of saying stuff like that they know the COD community is festering about to bolster their game. So it's really interesting from like a marketing perspective, and I think that's kind of neat to evaluate and look at as we continue to go forward till we get closer to release. That being said, open beta access gave us, I think, a total of 3 different maps and a wide variety of modes. A lot of modes that you could go into against bots, but then the primary multiplayer modes that are on display here in the beta are Conquest, which is very standard for Battlefield games. It's basically to capture the territory across the large map, and it's a live-based mode, and you have to capture the territories while also making sure that you don't run out of lives before the game ends. I will say it feels very weird in this open beta. It seems like the points don't really matter. It always comes down to kills, but I think what's happening is the more points that you control, it will actually reduce the enemy's lives more depending on how many points you have. I think that's how it's working, but to be honest, when you play it, it just feels like you can almost just ignore the points and just go for kills. It was really weird. I wasn't really sure how the mode worked. It just didn't feel very good, in my opinion. There was no real indicator as to what having more territory actually did for you, but I think it does come down to just lowering the amount of reinforcements the enemy team gets. There's just no indicator telling you that's what's going on. So at least for me and my buddies, we were kind of confused as to what the shit was going on, but I think that's what's going on there. I could be, it has to be that, to be honest. I just wish there was maybe a little bit of a UI indicator kind of above the scoreboard, just at least telling you that, they lost however many reinforcements because we owned 3 territories or something along those lines. But Either way, Conquest has been in the game for a super long time, but the other game mode in the beta that we have access to is a mode called Breakthrough, which is very similar to Rush from the previous Battlefield games, where you spawn in and there's 2 capture points for the attackers to prioritize, and then obviously there's a team of defenders trying to prevent them from capturing those points. If the attackers capture the 2 points, then the map pushes forward and there becomes more points for the attackers to capture and more for the defenders to defend until they get through the entire map, which has always been a really cool mode. I think Breakthrough is a little bit different in the fact that the battles themselves feel a lot more contained than they did in Rush. There was usually quite a bit of space for the attackers to have to cross to get to the objectives in the Rush game mode, and it felt a lot tighter in Breakthrough. Not really in a great way, in my opinion, I would say. We got 2 maps in the Breakthrough mode and 3 in Conquest, I think. I never saw the 3rd map come up in Breakthrough when we were playing that. And in my opinion, those 2 maps were very heavily defender sided. It seemed like it forced the attackers into just a few choke points that if you're on the defending team and your team is competent, you can kind of shut down all avenues, and most of the games ended before the attackers actually captured the 2 points, which I thought was kind of weird, and I don't know if that needs to be adjusted somehow, but that mode didn't really feel that good. We played it for a little bit and then ended up going back to Conquest, where, like I mentioned before, we were pretty confused, but we could at least play the game that way and it made some sort of sense instead of just getting funneled into a choke point and slaughtered. So that's kind of where we spent the majority of our time. On top of that, I would say that I was very impressed with the game in the amount of weapons that were able to be utilized throughout the open beta. Again, you expect these things to be relatively limited because it's just a beta test. And we got a good little selection of assault rifles, SMGs. I think there's 2 LMGs, 1 sniper rifle, 1 shotgun, 1 pistol. So a couple of those categories are pretty limited, but you got a good feel of a few different ARs, a few different, DMRs and carbines and things like that, just to kind of fiddle around with, which was cool. It's cool to have that variety, to be able to kind of spice things up a little bit. I will say, I think the weapon balancing is probably not in a great spot right now. Some weapons just feel completely strong, way stronger than others. So it just is very apparent when you switch from one weapon that performs very well to another weapon that doesn't perform very well. It's very, very apparent. So I think there needs to be some balancing done there. But again, it's an open beta. I'm not judging the game as a whole based on the balancing and things like that we're seeing here. Of course, they're going to be analyzing all of this stuff throughout the play tests that continue to happen until release. And they'll be able to make adjustments here and there as needed, but definitely felt like some weapons were a little underpowered compared to others, at least in my opinion. I don't know what the general consensus is on that. Again, it could just be because I'm absolutely trash too. It's absolutely possible. But that's definitely something that I felt going through the open beta. Sticking with weapons here, I also want to mention that I do not understand what is going on with sniper rifles in this open beta, but they almost feel unusable to me. Battlefield has always had bullet drop and bullet trajectory, and that's always been one of the heights and one of the best parts of Battlefield, in my opinion, is being able to just snipe and have it feel pretty authentic, to be honest, having to deal with bullet drop and all of that. I don't think there's any bullet drop in this beta, and even though there's no bullet drop in the beta, it just feels like your bullets don't fucking go where they're supposed. It's very strange. I don't know what the fuck's going on with that. Again, that's the bullet mechanics might not be in the game at this point, so that's very possible. But I tried to snipe a few times throughout my session and just wasn't really enjoying it. I just couldn't seem to hit a fucking thing, and I couldn't. My buddy that does snipe a lot in these games was also having troubles, and it was just kind of a weird feeling. So it's definitely something I think that needs to be worked on as well. But again, it's cool. We at least got to kind of mess around with them when they were in there. They were in there. It was kind of cool to mess around with them, I guess I should say. Sorry, it's like fucking 1 o'clock in the morning and I decided to make this on a whim. So I'm rambly. Okay, other than the weapon discussion, I think the game looks absolutely fantastic. I think the visuals are really well done. Battlefield has always kind of been on the cutting edge of graphical fidelity for as long as I can remember, especially ever since like Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1, I remember being really stunning. And I think they've continued that tradition throughout all of the games, including 42. I think 42 still did have a very nice visual aesthetic. Game just wasn't very good and didn't do very well. But I think Battlefield 6 looks really good. It reminds me a lot of Battlefield 4. The color palette kind of feels like it has that blue, I don't know, in my head, I guess it feels like it has that blue cover over it like Bad Company 2 did, but could just be my mind playing tricks on me. But to be honest, I just think the game looks really nice. So they're doing a great job with that. We have a lot more of the game to see though. Obviously there's hopefully more than 3 maps in the game. I'm sure that there is, but what they showed off here was spectacular. I think they did a great job with that, as expected from a Battlefield title. Looks fantastic. I think where this beta shines the most though is the sound effects. I think the weapon sounds are phenomenal. The sound of helicopters and jets flying overhead is maybe some of the best I've heard in gaming ever. A lot of bass in there, and it just really feels exciting and crazy. That stuff's all great. Bullets whizzing by and the cracks and all that sound absolutely fantastic. I think that the sound design is super good. I didn't have my headphones on, and I'm not a fucking competitive gamer. I've said it on this show a billion times, so I'm not sure. I wasn't really tracking footsteps throughout my playthrough or anything like that. I was kind of just bullshitting with my buddies and having a good time. So I wasn't really like dialed in to directional sound as far as people running around you and things like that. So I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that. I don't know how it is necessarily. I think there was one point in my playthrough, like the last match the night that we did, that I did hear footsteps, and I don't know if it was my teammate or a bad guy, but I tried to follow him and ended up fucking way off in the distance. But again, I'm not going to blame that on the game. Could just be me. But I thought I'd mention it because I know that's a big thing for a lot of you competitive FPS players out there. I would look to another reviewer for that. I'm not going to be able to give you that great of detail, but what I will say is the majority of the major sound effects in this game are really stellar. So all that being said, I think that this is a pretty good showing for an open beta. I think it is going to get people pretty excited, especially if you like Battlefield and adjacent games in that series. For me personally, since I'm just not a big fan of these big battle games, because I'm not able to keep up. It's just the way that it is. And I just not good at these games anymore, let alone, I'm not good at FPSs to begin with, and I'm definitely just not anywhere near competent enough to be good at Battlefield. So for me personally, I don't think this sold me on the game in any way, shape, or form. It's just not really my style anymore, but I will continue to check out the continuous open beta weekends that come out, if they continue to have open betas for free until they obviously lock it down and call it a closed beta for pre-ordered bonus people, which I'm not going to do at this point. It's not a game I would devote a lot of time into, to be honest. I'm kind of out of my multiplayer gaming phase for the most part. I would say I've been doing a lot more single player stuff, and that's been holding my attention, and I don't have to be the most skilled person, and it's not competitive, and getting old sucks, man. You got to make some adjustments in life, and I found one of the best ones to be single player games. So yeah, it's not one that really sold me, but I think it is important to note, as I mentioned at the beginning of this ramble session, if you like Battlefield, if you're looking for a COD replacement, it really isn't that, but it is a very competent shooter. I think it's showing a lot of promise here in the very early stages. Definitely needs to have some things changed, and I would love to see some more well, shit, I can't even say that. I'll just say it'll be interesting to see what they do for the remaining time that they have until launch. It looks like they're scheduling it out to have open, beta weekends kind of scattered throughout. So I think They have one this weekend, and then I think next weekend, the 14th through the 17th, there's another open beta session that's going to be taking place. I'd be interested to see if they add new content in there, if they throw in a couple extra maps, or if they have the week to kind of make some adjustments to some things I'm sure that are being criticized in some way, shape, or form. I'm sure there are people criticizing things. So that'd be cool to see. And like I said, if I can get access to it and continue to check it out as it progresses, I certainly will. But I'm pretty much done with it for now. I would say it was like a 4 or 5 hour session or something like that. And the whole time, well, I was having a lot of fun at the beginning, and then towards the end, I was just thinking about Atomic Heart, Death Stranding, and all the other games I need to be playing for after the credits and things like that. But ultimately, it was a good experience. I thought it was pretty good, just not necessarily for me, but that's kind of it. It's kind of my thoughts on it. I know this is a weird video, really rambly. I'm fucking tired, but I wanted to get a video out for you guys, so that's what I did, I guess. Other than that, hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all. Make sure you tell someone you love them today, because it could change their life, and we will see you guys on the next video. Take care. Talk to you later.